Greetings. You're watching Act One, a Canadian take on news events. I'm your host, Gordy Canuck, and tonight the topic at hand is going to be about what I consider to be the pending war with Iran. Move over, Renee Good, and everything that's happening in Minneapolis and ICE enforcement. That's had a lot of laser-like focus on it for the past week. It was last Wednesday, it was a week ago that shooting took place, and it has been sucking the proverbial oxygen out of the room. It's been dominating online discussions, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I still say Twitter. I can't X, whatever. Uh, so today it is right now It is Wednesday, the 14th of January. The time is 10:16 now. I started right on time. And for those who are familiar with my stream, for those who have been here before, you know about Max the Wonder Dog, my co-host. He's I've gotten into the habit, unfortunately or fortunately, he has become accustomed to, oh, Gordy, my master, the big guy is doing a podcast. He's on the internet. That means I get a treat. So I'm come over here, sit, 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 sit. See how well trained he is. Sit. And the training is my job, not his. Lay down, down. That's good. Shake paw, shake paw, shake. Good boy. Come on up. Now that Max has been looked after, Uh, I may get some peace. I may get a chance to focus in. I'm hoping I get some engagement tonight. I don't know if the thumbnail on this is compelling enough. I don't know if anyone's like, Iran, forget that. I want to hear about ICE. I want to hear about Minneapolis. I want to hear about Renee Good. I want to hear about, all the fire going back and forth by the two competing sides on that issue. I don't care about Iran yet, but I think we're going to see I would say within the next 48 hours. That would be my prediction. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nothing will come of it. A bit of background, most will be aware, but maybe not. Uh, Trump had been making overtures that the protesting against the Islamic regime in Iran, that the Iranian government, the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic, that they better pull back and stop executing, killing protesters, or the U.S. would respond. And that was the rhetoric coming from Washington, coming from Donald Trump, was that the U.S. would act to protect civilian protesters if in the opinion of Washington, the Iranian regime was, being heavy-handed. And heavy-handed they have been, at least according to all the reports. Now, the official numbers of civilians killed, I believe, is in the number somewhere around 1 to 2,000. However, there are sources claiming that it is significantly higher. I've seen in mainstream reporting, multiple sources, both left and right, that the number of people killed is at least 12,000 and maybe as high as 20,000. And it was under this pretext that Donald Trump was threatening to take military action against the Iranian government. Then he has since pulled back somewhat. He said that he's received credible assurances from within Iran, and it sounds like he's talking to government officials within Iran and saying that, or he's hearing about it, um, and um, that the assurances are that no more executions are planned, that we're going to play nice. And Trump has signaled somewhat, at least it appears, that, oh, maybe they're going to take a pause here and wait and see how things play out, etc. Now, I don't, I'm ex-military, but I don't think you have to be ex-military to recognize the importance of the element of surprise. I'm going to keep going on, but before I do, HM has shown up, and she's in the Brantford area of Ontario, which, if memory serves, we've talked about it before. That's Wayne Gretzky's old stomping grounds. That's out southwestern Ontario. I've driven through there. And she's saying, are you expecting lots of snow tonight? We are here in the Brantford area. Yes, my area, which is Kawartha, um, not Kawartha. That's my youngest son's school district, Kawartha Pine Ridge. I'm in Northumberland County. And yes, we are expecting as much as 25 centimeters. If there are any Americans who watch this, that's getting up close to a foot. It's about just shy of 10 inches. So we're expecting a lot of snow and winds blowing 40 plus kilometers per hour. So lots of drifting, blowing snow. It's going to be bad. And this is supposed to be starting any time now. It hasn't started snowing here yet, but it's supposed to continue right through the morning up until about 9 o'clock in the morning and then peter off. So, a little weather update. But Act One is the name of this channel, a Canadian take on news events. And hey, weather is news, especially in Canada. Uh, so let's see what else is being written. Eat Me, Nancy, who's in Montreal, is writing 2,200 is a hoax. CBS, which the number came from, lost a lot of credibility. And then Eat Me goes on to say 2,000 to 6,000 is, in her opinion, tops in Iran. And yes, greetings to you as well. Nancy, everyone's saying hi to each other right now. The only ones in the live chat are HM and Nancy. HM, that's the name, and Nancy's username is Eat Me. She is also a moderator on the stream. We'll see how things go, but I don't think I'm going to get trolled. I don't think the topic is contentious enough yet. Maybe it will turn into something contentious if I'm right, and if we do get into the U.S. and Iran going directly at each other. There is another possibility. I don't consider this likely, but I do consider it possible that rather than the United States striking Iran, that Israel might do it. But that remains to be seen. I don't. The reason I'm doubtful that Israel would be the one striking is because that just threatens perhaps to escalate things too far. However, if the goal is escalation, then Israel hitting Iran would make perfect sense. Because if war is the goal, and I don't discount that possibility that war is the goal. But at any rate, Trump has now, where are we? Trump said, you better stop killing your civilians, the protesters, or I'm coming after you. And then the reporting was that they're killing thousands of people. The numbers are all over the place, 1,000, 2,000, 12,000, maybe as high as 20, whatever the case. And Trump was being all gung-ho, but now we're hearing that Iran has signaled diplomatically to Washington that, all right, no more, there are going to be no executions. And on the surface, it appears as though Trump is willing to give them, for lack of a better expression, the benefit of the doubt. Okay, we'll wait and see. However, I was, before I got into the weather, that you don't have to be ex-military or military to know that in warfare, the element of surprise is huge. Uh, and for proof of that, just look at Pearl Harbor. And I know that there are individuals who have gone down the conspiratorial rabbit hole on the Pearl Harbor attack, who believe that the US had foreknowledge of that pending attack and that they left key assets in Pearl Harbor because they were trying to draw Japan into attacking them in order to get justification for the United States to enter the Second World War. However, what I would say is this: I maybe that is true. I don't discount the possibility. I read a book years ago, James Bamford, called The Body of Secrets, that outlined a number of what MAGA types and others would call deep state conspiracies like Operation Northwoods and more. But at any rate, so maybe senior elements within the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the White House knew that Japan was going to attack, but I doubt any of the servicemen on the USS Arizona or the Oklahoma or the other ships that were destroyed knew. I don't think the 2,000 plus people killed during Pearl Harbor knew that an attack was coming. Um, so we, in terms of the Iran situation, Trump signaling that, hey, we're going to come. Strategically, you might think, well, that's not a very, if you're really going to go at somebody, if you're really going to attack, you don't give a heads up, you don't give a warning. And then I have to openly speculate now is um, now that he's saying, "Oh, we're going to take a pause," really is this a false signal? Is this an attempt to lull the Iranians into more of a stand down position than rather than stand to? I don't know. And also, in the game of chess that warfare becomes, I'm certain that the Iranians are as much aware of Sun Tzu's art of war as the Americans, as everyone is. And the idea that the name of the game in war is deception. If you're about to attack, you want to make an attack seem like it's a long time off. And when an attack is a long time off, you perhaps want to make it appear like it's imminent. So we'll see how things play out, but I do think a shooting war is coming. And I think the focus, if I'm right, the focus will shift away from ICE and Minnesota and Renee Good and, the ICE officer who shot her and all that, and the debate raging. And there are some individuals out there who are calling this a psyop. And I don't discount anything on this channel. Ever, whether it's on the channel or not. This is who I am. Um, and then Nancy is saying that the 20K number, she's saying that the only source of it is CBS News. I did not get it from CBS News. However, where I got it from may have pulled it from CBS. I don't know. Now, another point that is breaking news within the last few hours. It's being reported that Iran has completely closed down the airspace over their country. Um, we're going to see what happens. But one of the other things I want to talk about tonight is the incredibly short shelf life of so much of what are seemingly major events in the world. Go back to July of 2024, just months before the US voted, and Donald Trump, the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Again, some contend that this was a psyop, a psychological operation, that it was, staged and, snake eyes type, um, whatever you want to call it. Snake Eyes type operation. And that came out later. The same allegations were made about the Charlie Kirk shooting, which was just in September of this past year. However, the Trump assassination attempt, whether it was a psyop, whether it wasn't, whatever the real story is, its shelf life was very short. The United States was embroiled in the election campaign, and the focus quickly shifted away from the assassination attempt. And people weren't within a week or two. It had become yesterday's news. There was other things to talk about. Trump seemed to want to bring it up a lot. He'd always say, I don't like talking about it, but then he'd go on for an hour. And, there was the Elon Musk endorsement. There was Trump going on to Joe Rogan, a guy who had previously affected something of a never Trump type stance, who was now, he never came out. I don't think he ever came out fully endorsing Trump, but I think it was clear to everyone who watched that podcast interview that Rogan was certainly leaning in that direction, decidedly in that direction. Anyway, what else is being written? Nancy believes that they knew about Pearl Harbor. The Japanese struck several other countries on the same day, but no one ever talks about that. I wasn't even aware that there were other attacks at that specific time. Uh, and then John is saying Snake Eyes, great film. I've seen it. I watched it once. And good evening to you too, as well, John 5. Nancy is saying that our prime minister, oh, yes, there's what we call in English, the premier of Quebec, Francois Legault, has announced his resignation, and there's an election due in La Belle Province in Quebec in October. And Francois Legault is kind of like a governor, or he'd be the equivalent of Doug Ford here in Ontario, what we call in English a premier. In French, Francois Legault is the first minister, the prime minister. The French term is he is the premier ministre. And so, and that's the same term that they use for the Premier Ministre de Canada, Prime Minister of Canada, but they will say Premier Ministre de Quebec. And he's resigning. His party is way down in the polls, the CAQ, the Coalition Avenir de Quebec, the Coalition for Quebec's Future is the name of his party. And with the party's popularity sagging so low, he said that Quebecers are signaling strongly that they want to change. It's time for me to leave. He's pulling a Justin Trudeau, basically, and saying, okay, I'll leave. And he's, I think, hopeful. I think his party is hopeful that what happened in Canada as a whole, that it will happen in the province of Quebec. That they'll choose a new leader. Hope I don't know that it'll work. I don't know that there is anyone waiting in the wings who has a resume that matches Mark Carney's. Like Carney or hate Carney, the majority of the population does not go deep into the weeds. Most of the population believed Mark Carney when he said, "Oh, I had nothing to do with Brookfield moving their head office, closing Toronto's head office and moving it to New York City. I had nothing to do with that," he said. That was after I left. However, it later was revealed that Carney had actually sent a letter to shareholders of Brookfield urging them to vote in favor of closing down the Canada office in Toronto, the head office, and moving it to New York City. So Carney loves to suck and blow at the same time. He likes to be for pipelines and against pipelines. He's sadly, unfortunately, he's turning out to be a somewhat skilled politician, because sucking and blowing is something of a political skill. It's a common characteristic, and those who can do it well, who can fool the majority, and that's not very hard to do, Look at what happened during COVID. The deadly coronavirus. Take all my rights away. Just keep me safe from the deadly coronavirus. Find me if I walk outside of my house and go and shoot some hoops in my driveway because I don't, unreal what we allowed to happen. Anyway, what else is being written? Eat Me is saying, good evening to John. I have 986 STE. Hey, long time no see, man. Long time no see to you as well. Good to have you back. Thanks for chiming in. Um, and Nancy lives in Quebec. She's a Montrealais, or rather a Montrealaise. Got to remember the feminine masculine. Le, la, une, and all that stuff. Quebecois, Quebecoise. So Montrealer. She's from Montreal, Quebec. So, and Quebec, Quebecers, far more than anywhere else I've been, Quebec is it's hyper political. It is such a political culture. It's in the blood. Two referendums staring down the barrel of a potential third if the Parti Québécois. I need to do a stream just on that. Here I am, people are coming onto the thumbnail and they're going, oh, this guy's talking about Iran. And they go, what the hell? He's talking about Quebec, Canada? I don't know. What the heck? Goodbye. I want to somewhat try and stick on topic with what is happening in Iran because this gets scary and it very much plays into something of a thesis statement that I've had probably going back to 2023 after the October 7th, when Hamas launched their attack against Israel. And at that time, everyone knew that Hamas was being backed by Iran. And so I very much at that point saw the potential for dominoes to start to start falling. You have the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, the three H's, all backed by Iran. And then if the US gets involved, and then Iran gets involved directly, as opposed to operating through their proxies, Iran is aligned with Russia. Russia, in turn, has a no limits partnership with China. North Korea is in that sphere, is in that group. And then you have the whole BRICS alliance. And for anyone unfamiliar, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, these are called the BRICS countries. And I think a better name for it would be CRIBS, simply because the C, China, they are the major player. They are the biggest player. Russia would be second. India, based on population and size of their economy, third. And then South Africa probably would be the next. But Brazil is a huge population country, 300-ish million. So, and they are forming an economic alliance that's, it's still somewhat in its infancy, but they are threatening to combat what is typically referred to as American hegemony, American control over so much of the world, resources, uh, and certainly monetary policy, because as things stand right now, the US dollar is still the world's default reserve currency. When countries hold money, currency in reserve, most often it's the US dollar, not euros, not rubles, not Chinese yuan. And so by aligning themselves together, these BRICS countries are hoping to combat. And this is something we're coming up to a battle for civilization, in my view. Things are moving far slower than I would like. I'm a rip the band-aid off kind of guy, jump right into the deep end, don't wade in slowly. Just get the diving board and splash. And what I see happening is it's almost like we're following a script. Let me read what's being said. What's being said. Nancy is fixating a lot on what's happening in Quebec, and I'll just touch on that briefly. Legault, she's saying remove the cross from the National Assembly. True, they have the province of Quebec on top of being hyper political. It is also the most secular province in Canada, and they're trying to remove all elements of religion from anywhere in the public sphere. They've told women that they can't wear the hijab or the burqa or the help me out with all the head coverings they have in the Islamic faith. I know the hijab and the niqab, and then there's the burqa. They banned public employees who are in public workspaces, like people like nurses and teachers, from wearing religious headgear or any religious symbols. And to be consistent within the National Assembly, the cross that has been there in the National Assembly going back to Duplessis and probably before was removed. Uh, and then and during the COVID era, of course, Legault imposed a curfew. According to Nancy, it was from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. The couvre-feu, the curfew. Uh, and she's saying it was 2 years in a row, and she believes they're cooked. I haven't looked at it closely enough, aside to say that the current situation, yeah, they do look cooked, but things change with a new leader. Honestly, I would be surprised if there's a prominent enough person to jump into his place who could do what Mark Carney did. Mark Carney resurrected liberal fortunes because people didn't hate the liberals so much as they just hated Justin Trudeau. And so they were willing to give the benefit of the doubt to his top economic advisor for the past, 4 years. Uh, Basically, Trudeau was driving the car, but it was Carney sitting in the back seat telling him where to go. And now we've got that guy in the back seat driving the car. Anyway, and right now, here the world is in. I think the world should be on tenterhooks, but what's Carney doing? He's gone to see his bosses. He's over in China. They own him. That's my view. So yeah, but one of the points I wanted to touch on, and I started to talk about it, and then I got sidetracked, is the incredibly short shelf life of news. The Charlie Kirk assassination is one news. There are two news stories within the past 2 3 years that have had some staying power. Power. One would be the October 7th Hamas attack and the ensuing war between the Palestinians, the Hamas, and the IDF and the Israelis. That dominated. However, I think a big part of that, the reason why that news dominated so much, is because of is the Islamic world. I think propaganda coming from Islamic news sources sympathetic to Palestine kept that high on, high up above the fold. That's an old newspaper reference. When newspapers, you'd look down and there's below the fold, which is hidden, you can't see it, and then there's above the fold, you see the big headlines. And it stayed up there for a long time. And then the next event of that major nature, we had the assassination attempt on Trump, as I mentioned, but that didn't seem to last long. It seemed to be a week or two, and the news machine, the news cycle had moved on. It had been pushed way down, and it was all about Donald. It was all about the election, about Kamala and her interview on 60 Minutes, and Elon Musk endorsing Trump, and then the Joe Rogan interview and everything else, and then the election itself. And then the next major news story after that might be the Charlie Kirk assassination, and that had a decent shelf life. Happened in September. It was still being talked about a lot in October, November, December. A lot of podcast, YouTube stations were fixating on that. Zach Costello, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes. You couldn't get enough of this stuff. Tucker Carlson, everyone was waging in on that. And it just kind of kept snowballing and snowballing. Uh, and then the next little news item that only just happened a week or so back, about a week before the shooting in Minneapolis, was the what happened in Venezuela, with the U.S. going in, sending armed forces in, seizing Maduro, taking him back to New York, where he's been indicted and is going to be charged with narco terrorism or whatever they're going to call it. And that didn't last long because bang, Minnesota happened, and it's like, okay, forget Venezuela. Now we're on to talking about Minnesota, and is ICE, oh, is this overreach? Is this government tyranny? Or is this simply, you know, America looking after its citizens and looking after the rule of law and prosecuting those who entered and stayed in the United States of America illegally? Differing points of view on it. I try as best I can to remain emotionally detached because, as I said in a video that I just published, when emotion gets involved, rationality often goes out the window. It's hard to see things clearly when you're emotionally engaged, when you're either afraid or enraged or incredibly sad and, oh my God, how could they kill that poor woman? She had children. Oh my, and I believe it clouds your judgment. And I think that gives me a certain degree of ability to look at both sides. Like, one thing with the whole Iran business, before doing this video earlier this evening, I decided to check out what CBC's reporting was in tonight's nightly newscast. So I brought it up here on YouTube. And the first 5 or so minutes of the CBC national newscast this evening, Wednesday, the 14th of January, was all about what's going on in Iran. And they were coming down very hard on the Iranian regime and the manner in which it is treating its citizens. And it gives you pause for thought. I am one who tends to be very distrustful of CBC reporting. And CBC is telling me that the Iranian regime is bad. Now, as I often say, I don't think CBC lies about everything. They may lie a lot, but they do report some truth. It's just hard to weigh what is true and what is not. Another prominent left wing, progressive news source that I like to check out is The Guardian. And they had a video on their page with two women journalists, I guess, and they were quite emotional about what is happening in Tehran, in the entire country of Iran. They talked about the people being killed. They were playing on the emotional heartstrings, the same way we saw the emotional heartstrings being tugged on by what I will refer to as Hamas-led propaganda. And I'm not saying that bad things aren't happening. Bad things always happen in war. Whether that war is in the Gaza Strip, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's in Syria, Nigeria, Iran, war is brutal. And right now, it looks like the Iranian regime, by all accounts across the spectrum, has gone to war against its own citizens. The Iranian regime is referring to those protesting as terrorists. They are terrorists. They are not protesters. And they don't have the same constitutional protections that people in the West have. This concept of due process. Even in the Guardian piece, they kept referring to them as sham trials, kangaroo courts, hanging judges. It doesn't matter what the evidence is, you're going to the gallows, they're going to stretch your neck. And it strikes me the overwhelming sentiment I seem to be getting from the left and from the right is providing a justification for military action to be taken against Iran. Then what happens? Does China get involved? Does Russia get involved? Does North Korea get involved? This is what I have been anticipating for the past several years. But I don't know how many people are still watching right now, at least a couple. Are there any other thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on this Iranian conflict, on the conflict between the people who are said to be protesting? And the one thing is, to really know what is going on, in my view, you absolutely 100% you need to have boots on the ground. In this digital AI dominated information age, false news and false reporting and propaganda, we're living in the perfect environment for it. And we have been conditioned to be emotional creatures at heart, and yeah, and react emotionally rather than rationally, sanely, rationally, coolly, and calmly, taking a step back, putting our emotions in check. That's not the way the news operates. Horrific images emerging from Tehran as brutal government forces attempt to squash uh, peaceful protesters. The language, the way it's written, so the days of detached Walter Cronkite style, here are just the facts, that's gone. That's gone. Now we're into a very propagandistic age. It's distressing, but hey, it is what it is. Anyway, not getting a lot of engagement tonight. Hey, big snowstorm coming. According to HM, it had already started out in her area, out in Brantford, which that's she's about, HM is about 3 hours, about 300 kilometers, about 180 miles from where I am. So if it's snowing where she is, it's probably going to take a while for it to hit me. But let me take a look out the window. No, little bit of snow on the back deck. Uh, and then Nancy, with respect, speaking about what happened in Minnesota, she's saying that Renee left her family to become an activist. It is sad what happened, but she made her choices to go on and harass ICE agents with her partner. Because I think we're the news cycle. I think we're in a transitionary period. I think within 48 hours, Minnesota is going to be like that truck that blew up, that Tesla Cybertruck that blew up in front of a Trump building in Nevada. And around the same time, there was someone who had weaponized their vehicle and driven through the French Quarter of New Orleans. So, big news. And then within 48 hours, no one's talking about it anymore. I think within 48 hours, that Minneapolis is going to drift away. But final thoughts on what happened in Minneapolis. My final thoughts are I'm going to fixate when all these things are happening. Where do we look to for answers? Jesus Christ. Get into the Bible. I just did a video, pre-recorded video, the one prior to this one, talking about that fact and to draw on scripture. The Bible, for me, and especially the Old Testament, is a story of people walking away from God and then getting closer to God, walking away, getting close, enjoying the benefits and the blessings that come from being in closer relationship with God, and then the curses and the strife and trouble that comes from when they walk away. And I internalize that, and I say, that's my life. I was brought up going to church, going to Sunday school, going to Bible camp, memorizing Bible verses, but then I walked away, then I came back, and then late teenage years, I turned my back on it completely. Went into the wilderness, and I didn't wander for 40 years, but 20-ish. And then around the age of 40, I started to come back to faith. And that's an ongoing process. I do not make any proclamations that that I've got it all figured out. No, I don't have it all figured out. But the world is shaking right now, and I think it's going to start shaking even more violently. How quickly? No prediction. I think I see what is coming. My bias is to I prefer quicker rather than slower. If it's gonna if bad stuff is coming, let's get it over with, bring it on. But that's not the way the world operates. Nancy is saying what comes out Iran is what's coming out of Iran is fragmented very much. Their internet, at least reportedly, has been shut down. There's talk of people in Iran going to the border in Iraq so that they can access internet and that they can talk to and get the word out to families because there is a large Iranian diaspora or diaspora. Forget how to pronounce that stupid word. Dispersion. There's a lot of expatriate Iranians all around the world. This past summer, I was down at the provincial park, not far from my home, Presqu'île, and I met an Iranian gentleman, and he wanted to talk to me, finding out I'm ex-military. He wanted to talk about Iran, about how horrible the Ayatollah Khamenei is. I have difficulty with that because the Islamic Revolution that took place in 1979, the Ayatollah back then was the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now it's the Ayatollah Khamenei. So anyway, um, finish what Nancy wrote. What comes out of Iran is very fragmented. Internet shut off. Who knows what is really happening there? Exactly. That's where I say boots on the ground is what is needed. Um, and then Nancy's writing that before my stream started, Novesti or Novicity or whatever, a streamer that covers live events, the some thumbnail said that ICE shot another protester. Not sure if this is the case. Going to check it out afterward. It's worth checking out. Worth checking out. And when you're like-minded with myself and you view so much of what is going on in the world as being scripted, as having the potential to be psychological operations, you almost feel like, okay, is that a distraction? What's the distraction? Is it, it's that old military bromide about, that major attack that you're trying to repel on your north wall is just, it's a diversion, and the real attack is coming shortly from the south. But you can't ignore the attack on your north wall. If it's a sizable attack, you have to respond to it. And maybe you have to move some extra resources there because it's warranted. Otherwise, they're going to break your perimeter. Who knows? Anyway, and then Yancey's writing also heard from the US that Trump is going for Mexico. Yes, there is talk. He has talked about the potential for, or not about the potential, he's talked about putting boots on the ground. He's talking about landing troops in Mexico to fight against, under the same pretext as what happened in Venezuela, that, to fight narco terrorism, to fight the drug cartels that operate out of Mexico. And I don't doubt that there are a lot of drug cartels in Mexico. So, and then of course we have the whole Greenland situation where Trump appears hell bent. Need to do a video just on that. There are too many things to talk about in today's world. And one of my strengths, I don't want to overplay it, but one of my strengths is I'm fairly adept. I don't think I'm the greatest at it, but I think I am fairly adept at being well-rounded and having a broad range and able to assimilate a lot of information at the same time. And goodness knows, current events, news and current events in the world, there's so much going on. Sometimes, though, I can't. Sometimes I can't keep up. There are some things I don't know. And I have no compunction about admitting when I don't know something. But anyway, Greenland is Trump, by all indications, everything I can see without being without being sitting down in the Oval Office or being at the Pentagon, it sounds like at least what he's signaling to the world is that I want it, I'm taking it one way or another. It's going to be American soil. And I did some checking, and there is some what I will call false reporting going on from the mainstream with respect to Greenland and the US relationship with Denmark and Greenland. They're often saying that the US has pretty much carte blanche to increase its military presence on the, I guess it's an island, on Greenland, that they, you know, go ahead, do whatever you want. But that is not true. What they have is they have, anything they do, they have to first consult with, it's in consultation with, they've signed agreements with Denmark. Previous administrations have signed agreements with Denmark going back to the 1950s and forward. And the US is allowed to increase its military presence, however, in consultation with Denmark. What if they say no? What if they want to open up a major air base there? What if they want to position nuclear subs? If they want to put a harbor, a facility that can service nuclear subs, are the Danes going to be okay with that? Are the Greenlanders going to be okay with that? When it's your own soil, you don't have to worry about consultation. Consultation slows things down. Politics slows things down. So we'll see. We will see. And then Nancy is saying every warlord wants their peace prize. Yeah. Trump's, I don't, I would be, well, nothing would make me fall off my chair in today's world, but I would be surprised if Donald Trump were to be a Nobel Prize winner, a Nobel Peace Prize. Goodness knows he's not going to win the Nobel for physics or economics or anything else, nothing academic. So, at any rate, you've been watching Act One, a Canadian take on news events. Whether you watched it live or on the live stream, thank you for tuning in. You're welcome to hit like, you're welcome to subscribe, all the above. You can do with my content as you wish. It's in the public domain. If I wanted to keep my thoughts to myself, I wouldn't have an internet connection. I wouldn't have a YouTube station. This is a crowded space. It's difficult. It's competitive. It's hard to get your voice out there. So if you want to help me out, that would be great. Comments help that, likes help that, shares help that, these kinds of things. At any rate, God bless. As I say, in this crazy, tumultuous, upside down, shaking ground beneath our feet world, the ultimate way to find peace and contentment and assuredness is through getting into relationship with the Lord God, creator of all things. And the way that you do that is by getting to know his son, Jesus Christ. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Jesus and God are one. God took on human flesh and came into our broken, fallen, sinful world as an atoning sacrifice so that we can be reconciled to a perfect and holy God. And I recognize, I get it in our world that preaches rationality while propagandizing everyone into emotional states of anger, fear, and everything else. In this world that preaches rationality, that faith is difficult, incredibly difficult. People who express the Christian faith, who profess Christ as Lord, are often mocked, ridiculed, considered to be Ned Flanders, stupid, ignorant, anti-science, and all the rest. And so I recognize that faith is tough. We're programmed, the culture, North American culture, certainly Western culture, programs the population to ridicule Christ. And it can be going against the culture is hard. No one likes to be thought of as stupid, ignorant, troglodyte. No one wants that, or very few. I don't want it. I don't want people thinking of me in that regard, but I recognize that there are individuals who do. Oh, he's talking about Jesus. He's one of those. And yes, I am one of those. And that's why at the end of my streams, which I'm reaching the end of it now, I'm I read or I reiterate a blessing spoken in the book of Numbers, end of chapter 6, where Aaron, who anointed part of the Levitical priesthood, who is anointed as the high priest of Israel, is given a blessing by Moses to speak over God's covenant chosen people. And when you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and you profess him as such, then you are part of God's covenant chosen people. And the blessing that Aaron spoke to God's covenant chosen people, this is a shortened version of it. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord God Almighty make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord God Almighty, creator of all things, heaven and earth, may he grant you peace. And I'm here to tell you, he will. He can. His hand is outreached. And I'll reiterate what I say so often on here, and that is that you will not come to faith on my YouTube station or anyone else's. You need to get, if you hear the Savior calling you, if you are one of his sheep and you recognize his voice and you feel yourself being called, led to dig in deeper, don't do it online. The best I can do with my station is to maybe give, even if it's just one person, great. More the better, but one, two, three, whatever it is, if I can nudge them toward seeking out a community, a faithful community. That might be the topic of my next video, talking about how do you find a faithful church? Jehovah's Witnesses certainly seem interested in me. So do the Mormons, the Latter-day Saints, and but am I supposed to be Catholic? Which one should I be? So I might do a video on that. Anyway, God bless. Thank you for watching. And again, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And we will talk to you soon. I'm probably going to have more content coming out. And live streams tend to be all over the map. When I do uploaded videos, not live, they tend to be more focused and a lot shorter. Anyway, God bless. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, HM. Thank you, John 5. Thank you, anyone who tuned in, and hope to see you back. Bye now.